The moment the grid fails, water becomes the first invisible threat. Not fire, not violence, not even food scarcity. Water. Within hours of a total systems blackout, municipal pressure begins to collapse. Purification plants lose automation, and the illusion of infinite clean water disappears. What most people never realize is that modern water systems are not designed to operate without continuous power, chemical dosing, and human oversight. The danger is not immediate dehydration, it is delayed contamination. By the time people recognize the risk, they have already consumed compromised water. That is where the real crisis begins. The failure starts upstream. Treatment facilities rely on electrically driven pumps, controlled filtration rates, and precise chemical balancing. Without these, sediment bypasses filters, microbial loads increase, and disinfection becomes inconsistent. Even gravity-fed systems degrade as pressure imbalances allow backflow contamination. In urban environments, aging pipes already carry biofilms, thin layers of bacteria that remain harmless under controlled flow but become active when stagnation occurs. Once flow slows or reverses, these microbial colonies begin to shed into the water supply. The system does not need to collapse completely, it only needs to lose stability. The common misunderstanding is that clear water is safe water. This assumption has led to countless cases of waterborne illness during disaster scenarios. Clarity only indicates the absence of large particulates. It says nothing about dissolved pathogens, viruses, or chemical contaminants. In fact, some of the most dangerous contaminants, like E. coli, Giardia, or certain heavy metals, are completely invisible and odorless. People trust their senses, but the human body is not equipped to detect microbial threats before ingestion. By the time symptoms appear, dehydration accelerates and survival margins shrink rapidly. What remains largely overlooked is the science of decentralized water harvesting under collapse conditions. Most people think in terms of storage, bottled water, tanks, reserves, but storage is finite. The hidden principle is not storage, but continuous acquisition and purification. Water exists everywhere in trace forms, in the air, in soil, in vegetation, and even in temperature differentials. The key is understanding phase change in surface interaction. When air cools to its dew point, water vapor condenses into liquid. This is not a rare phenomenon. It occurs every night in most climates. The challenge is not the presence of water, it is capturing it efficiently. Condensation-based harvesting exploits thermal gradients. When a surface temperature drops below the ambient dew point, moisture forms. Materials with high thermal conductivity, such as metals, accelerate this process. Positioning these surfaces in open airflow zones increases yield. The angle, texture, and exposure of the surface all influence droplet formation and runoff efficiency. A smooth surface allows droplets to merge and flow, while a textured surface increases nucleation points but may trap water. The balance between these factors determines whether a system produces usable quantities or negligible output. Scientific measurements show that even in moderately humid environments, a properly designed condensation surface can yield measurable water overnight. It will not replace high-volume sources, but it creates a consistent trickle, enough to sustain life when combined with other methods. This is where most survival strategies fail. They rely on singular solutions instead of layered systems. The overlooked advantage of condensation is its independence from ground contamination. It bypasses soil-borne pathogens entirely, producing relatively clean water that requires minimal treatment compared to surface sources. Historical data from arid regions reinforces this principle. In coastal deserts where rainfall is nearly non-existent, communities have used fog nets to capture airborne moisture for decades. These systems operate passively, requiring no electricity, no moving parts, and minimal maintenance. The efficiency depends on mesh density, wind speed, and humidity levels. While such setups may seem specialized, the underlying physics applies universally. Even in urban environments, microclimates form around buildings, rooftops, and shaded areas, creating localized zones where condensation can be harvested. The survival implications are profound. When centralized systems fail, the ability to generate water continuously becomes more valuable than any stored reserve. A person with limited bottled water but effective harvesting techniques can outlast someone with large reserves and no replenishment strategy. This shifts the entire survival equation from consumption management to production capability. It also reduces dependency on risky sources like rivers, which become contamination hotspots during collapse events due to runoff, sewage leaks, and industrial discharge. As conditions worsen, the competition for clean water intensifies. Surface sources become contested, and filtration materials degrade over time. Improvised filters clog, chemical disinfectants run out, and boiling becomes fuel-intensive. At this stage, low-energy, passive systems gain strategic importance. They operate silently, require minimal resources, and remain largely unnoticed. This is not about secrecy, it's about efficiency under constraint. The less energy a system requires, the more sustainable it becomes in a prolonged crisis. But condensation alone is not enough. It's one layer in a broader system that must adapt to changing conditions. The next escalation involves integrating multiple harvesting methods, combining atmospheric capture with surface collection and controlled purification. Each method compensates for the weaknesses of the others, creating redundancy. Without redundancy, failure is inevitable. With it, survival becomes a matter of discipline and knowledge rather than luck. The transition from dependence to independence begins with understanding that water is not scarce, it is dispersed. The environment holds it in different forms, waiting to be converted. Those who recognize this shift early gain a decisive advantage. Those who do not will continue searching for sources that no longer exist in usable form. And as the timeline extends, the gap between these two groups widens until it becomes irreversible.